You don't have to be a victim anymore. I know some of you would tell us there are horrific things that have happened to you where you had no part to play in that because you were abused as a child or abused as an adult. And I'm not taking anything away from that, but you have the responsibility of what you do now. You don't have to stay a victim. We blame everything, and here's what I can almost guarantee. There's something inside of you that wants to blame where you are on somebody else and why you're stuck on somebody else, besides taking responsibility yourself. And here's the problem with this. When you play the blame game, you always lose. 2 reasons. The first one is this. It happens right here with Adam and Eve. God says, you gave me that woman. Eve says, the devil tricked me. The tough part of each of those statements is there is some truth, but it's not the whole truth. Because when we blame others, we focus on a piece of the truth, not our part of the truth. And this is where we are. We carry this basket of blame around with us. Now, I brought my little basket of blame right here, filled with all of these dirty clothes. And this is basically what you and I do in every relationship. We walk in with our basket, and we're hoping somebody else will clean it. This is from the last job. You won't believe what they did to me there. Don't you do that to me. In fact, you need to be so good to me that you make up for the stuff that's in here. In fact, a lot of us walk around with this basket filled with clothes that are dirty, and we always want to point out what somebody else has done, and we don't even figure out the stuff that we have done. Yeah, they might have spilled coffee on this sleeve, but you got a grass stain on this sleeve. All we want to talk about is what they did to me. And we carry the basket into every single situation in our life because we're always blaming somebody else. Why is it so easy to just focus on someone else's issues? Maybe that's where you are right now, because you don't have to face any of the problem of yourself. You do realize if you never deal with your issues, your part to play, your mess, you're going to carry these exact same issues into the next relationship and the next marriage and the next job and the next budget. Maybe it's time to stop airing everybody else's dirty laundry and just focus on yours. Maybe it's time to start doing some of your own laundry. Back in the 18th century, there was this devastating disease called the perpetual fever. And what would happen is women would give birth, and about 80% of these women in the next 48 hours would develop this horrendous fever and die. And nobody could figure it out. And in the mid-1800s, a guy by the name that we've often heard of, Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, pointed out, I keep noticing that your doctors are performing autopsies in the morning and delivering babies in the afternoon, and they're not washing their hands in between. Now, we hear that and we think, well, that's just common sense. Well, back then, nobody even thought about that. And for 30 years, they didn't believe him because they kept saying, it's not our fault. It's got to be something else. Until finally, someone realized if we just wash our hands and our instruments, this disease will go away. And this is when the modern method of sterilizing in hospitals went into effect. And lo and behold, the Black Death of childhood began to disappear. Sometimes we're the problem, and we don't like to admit it. Until we take responsibility and wash our own hands and focus on our own dirt and recognize what is in here is probably from us, and we stop carrying around the mess and blaming it on everybody else, it's time to put down the basket of blame, or your issues will follow you everywhere you go in the future. In other words, you've got to own your piece of the blame pie, because everybody gets a little piece of it, but you've got some as well. In other words, you got to do your own laundry. Now, here's the second thing. Blaming forfeits your power to change. Now think deeply about this. If someone else is responsible for the situation you're in today and the pain you're in today, and if it's all on them, here's what you're saying. Unless they change or do something, you have no power to change. You've basically given them all the power instead of taking responsibility to change yourself. Blaming forfeits your power to change. This is a victim mentality where you can't change unless someone else does it for you. A few years ago, I sat with a counselor and was working through my laundry basket of all the things other people had done to me. And I learned this valuable tool. It's called the blame triangle. What my counselor said to me was, when difficulties occur, we're racing to find our place on the blame triangle. And there's only 3 stops. There's the hero, there's the victim, and there's the villain. And we all want to be the hero for other people. I can fix you. We all don't want to be the villain where it can never be forgiven. But we all settle with being the victim. Look what happened to me. And friends, if we're to be honest, most of us are stuck on the blame triangle, and we are stuck feeling the victim. And we think, if only they had, and if only they would, and if only my life was better, and if only my body type was different, and if only my friends would. You got to get off the blame triangle. So how do you do that? Well, this is what's so great about when you're a follower of Jesus. You have access to something that other people can only wonder about, and we get a chance to tell them about. Here's what the Apostle Paul says. The Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead now lives in you. And just as God raised Christ Jesus from the dead, he will give life to your mortal bodies by the same Spirit living within you. In other words, the same power that rose Jesus from the grave, now when you're a follower of Jesus and you've been baptized into him, empowers you to deal with your laundry. You don't have to be a victim anymore. I know some of you would tell us there are horrific things that have happened to you where you had no part to play in that because you were abused as a child or abused as an adult. And I'm not taking anything away from that. But you have the responsibility of what you do now. You don't have to stay a victim.